if you're not open to constructive criticism, including like severe limitations or preferences, then, you probably should be building faster and funnier.
One, two, three.
Coming up, we're talking with the founders of Numanac, all about building an AI-first farm management tool. The Modern Acre is presented by Ambrook. Ambrook's mission is to build a more prosperous and resilient future for America's family-run businesses. They are starting with accounting tools to help businesses and farms manage finances, improve margins, and stay independent. To learn more, check out ambrook.com or hit the link in our show notes.
All right, Ty, I've got a confession to make.
Hit me.
So washing my face has been kind of like the dentist for you. It's just something I've never done. I've just opted out of washing my face ever. Like my wife has a whole skincare routine at night. She's just the lotions, the powders, all this stuff. I've just never done it. I've never washed my face. And she's like, how do you not wash your face? And I finally bit the bullet. Time. I'm going to be 40 next year. I'm like, I got to start taking care of myself. So I officially have a skincare routine. I'm in the game. I washed my face the past couple nights.
Okay. I have lots of follow-ups. First, thanks for the update. Second, I do want to call out the fact that I do, in fact, go to the dentist, Tim. What are we investing in this type of thing, Tim? I mean, this is adding a new budget line item to the Nuss household.
It's a big commitment for sure. Do you know the guy Sahil Bloom on Twitter? He's like a business influencer.
That's my guy. I love him.
He like launched a skincare routine. Have you seen this?
No.
It's actually called Wild Roman of all names, but it's basically like this super healthy skincare line where it's like these like ethically sourced ingredients, like anything you can hunt or pick. Basically, there's no kind of synthetics in it, so it's kind of this wash your face and then a serum and a moisturizer. It's a lot of steps for me, Ty. So I got to see if I can be consistent with it. But so far, so good.
Oh, this is crazy. I've followed it, but I'm off social, so maybe I didn't see it. Roman is actually his son's name, which is also my son's name. I didn't name him after his son, but pretty crazy. You'll have to keep us posted. I'm sure the listeners will be chomping at the bit to hear, how this goes for you.
Yeah, you've been pushing us to do more videos, so like this might be like the little push to like get myself a little glow up before we start doing more video.
Are you look maxing right now?
Dude, I'm looks maxing, bro.
This is a day that I didn't know that we were gonna get to.
Seriously. But it is kind of cool that he's like an influencer in the business world and like just as passionate about whatever like thing that's totally different from his day job and like launches this line. I think it's like kind of cool when people zig and zag like that.
Yeah, I've followed him for a while. He writes a newsletter that's really popular, and that's what got him, I think, really popular. And he has a big following on Twitter. And he came out with a book, I think, last year that I read, The 5 Types of Wealth, which I definitely recommend. And he's an investor in businesses, so he kind of has his hand in a lot of different things, which I can respect. And pretty cool to see him launch this. So I'll have to look into this more. Great find, Tim. Great poll.
Thanks, Ty. Well, excited to get into this conversation, Ty. We talked to the two co-founders of Numanac, which is a cool new platform, basically using voice to AI, basically being able to talk into your phone to give it insights on what you're looking at in the field, whether that's scouting, whether you're walking through, looking at blocks. So typically a lot of this has been done with farm management software or pen and paper, and they're really taking another look at how data can be ingested into these types of systems. So it's a really interesting way of thinking about it.
Yeah, no, it feels, Tim, like we're entering this new wave of the next generation of AgTech companies that are more AI forward, AI first. So it's cool to just hear about how they're thinking about building a business, lean team, a different approach to, farm management software that's been around for a long time with this voice first approach, an emphasis on scouting. Let's jump in with what's top of mind for Daniel.
Top of mind, I'm sure, as you know, we just got off of the World AgriTech Innovation Summit, San Francisco, the Reservoir, Salinas opening. I fractured my hand right before those events. And as you know, farmers, ag professionals have a very firm handshake, and I wasn't going to shy away. So that pain is kind of on my mind, along with the mobile app launch, which we're very excited about, of course.
What about you, Dan?
Well, if I'm being honest, my wife gave birth to our second a month ago, and that's kind of everything in the world other than Numanac. She doesn't enjoy the fact that I'm secretly up till 2 a.m., but I'm balancing that. Plus, still being in the Marines, obviously there's some interesting world events going on that I have to care about. So lots of things.
Your guys' top of mind. Very impressive across the board. No, yeah, we are very family friendly here at the Modern Acre. Tim and I both have young kids. I have a 7-month-old, so there's light at the end of the tunnel. We're like, we're just hang in there. I the first few months I was just blacked out, heads down, just trying to get through it. But well, guys, we're excited to chat with you, learn more about what you guys are building. So, I mean, maybe it'd be helpful context, share a little bit more about each of you, your backgrounds, what got you into ag in the first place. Maybe Daniel, we'll start with you.
I was a poli-sci major at UChicago who knew nothing about agriculture. And I thought I was going to go to law school. I took the LSAT. The Russian war in Ukraine happened, COVID supply chain issues happened, and they really highlighted the fragility of our food systems. And so I thought to myself, okay, here's this very important problem now that I know nothing about, but which makes me very excited to delve into. And so I kind of reoriented my career towards AgTech, and naively, I started off in vertical farming. So I was learning how to design vertical farms, thinking that would be the end-all, be-all solution to agriculture. And I did some hydroponics research over at Yale. That's where I met Dan, where we kind of talk about national security, food security, on and on and on, and decided to start a company. Shortly thereafter, I dropped out of Yale, came over to MIT to learn real estate development and finance, to learn how to develop vertical farms. I realized that the math doesn't quite work out in the US, at least, and that farmers, conventional farmers, traditional farmers, need a lot of support. And so I started flying out to Iowa, Mississippi, Louisiana, California, Washington, kind of boots on the ground, meeting farmers, and realized that most stakeholders in agriculture demand farmer data to be able to provide services, loans, insurance, whatever it may be, but no one's quite helping them collect data. And when I kind of looked at the field conditions, I saw the yellow notebooks, the iPads, and the laptops, on the truck, inputting data hours on end, putting that into Excel spreadsheets, and then re-exporting it 5-10 different ways to 5-10 different parties. And so we thought, okay, let's solve that. Let's eliminate the data entry interface, help them get digitized, give them the data and context with which they can benefit from AI and autonomy. And we'll figure everything out after that. And that's kind of how Numanac got started. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, super excited to dig into the business. But before, Dan, maybe fill us up to speed with your background and what led you to Numanac.
Bit of a non-linear path. I grew up in South Texas, rural community down there amongst the farms and ranches. I worked as a carpenter and I worked construction before. I ended up joining the Marine Corps to pay for college. Luckily, they paid on the front end, so I got to go to college first, which meant that I became an officer. I was a ground contract because I was supposed to be a combat engineer, but they ended up selecting me to become a pilot and ultimately making me an attack helicopter pilot. So I fly the AH-1Z Cobra, and I still do to this day. But over the course of a decade, active duty in the Marine Corps, I was responsible for kind of a litany of jobs, including legal investigations, safety investigations, doing a lot of root cause analysis, along with running operations, running the flight line division, maintenance. Never got away from working with my hands. And then my last stint on active duty was with Force Recon, where I was the air officer and the airstrike instructor. But what was kind of hidden behind that was advanced tech integration between space and drones and like large operational area, comprehensive integration of assets and intelligence collection and dissemination. While I was in that role, I was traveling across the country to instruct various special groups on how to conduct airstrikes. And while I was doing that, the thing that kept coming up was actually food security at all of these bases, because the bases are spread throughout, usually in rural parts of America, but food security was an issue for all of the families on those bases. That was the first time that it kind of piqued my interest. And then when I left active duty, switched the reserves and went to Yale for architecture and met Daniel, we started talking about what can we actually do about this. So my approach has always been food security is very much national security. I know that as very tangibly from my experiences. And now my role with Numanac is largely to convert that understanding of how an operational area is run and how we convert all of these various factors into usable intelligence. And we advance all these methods of technology into something that ultimately gets somebody that doesn't have time to learn all of those different caveats to the so what. So that's kind of how we got to where we are.
I have so many questions. I'm excited to dig into this. First off, Dan, thank you for your service. I appreciate you and all that you do. Okay, guys, I want to dig in here more. So maybe let's first, like, how do you guys think about the business model? This is a great idea. It's, I think everyone can get behind everything you said. Now, how do you build a business from it? Talk to us about how you're thinking about the business model.
So the business model that we're pursuing right now understands the most ideal end state to be a full service model regarding farm decision making and intelligence. There was an article put out by Sequoia recently where they say that service is a new kind of next $1 trillion business. And they're essentially saying that point solutions or kind of SaaS models that provide fractions of a service's value actually will lose to service startups that are kind of in the background, basically software companies that are able to capture the full value of that entire service. So that essentially looks like moving away from just helping out with record keeping, context accumulation, and maybe context analysis to being able to generate agronomic advisory, tailored, personalized recommendations, and so on and so forth, which is obviously long-winded road where distribution is going to be very difficult to solve. But the kind of tiered model that we're looking at right now is first getting onto operations by saving them time, providing them with immediate value rather than saying, hey, collect data and we'll give you a dashboard. And then next going to the per acre intelligence model, where the accumulation of context, analysis of weather patterns, yield predictions, and those things can be done very comprehensively in a personalized manner. And then moving on to a PCA-CCA partnership, whereby we're able to provide that full service and capture that per acre value to drive the scale of the business. So that's how we're thinking about the model.
Yeah, it almost seems to me to be like an evolution of like farm management software where like 10 years ago, there was a lot of players starting to come into the space. It was granular conservice that were, here's a fancy set of software, but it was really grower dependent to actually add inputs to make those tools valuable. And you're kind of bridging that gap by making it easier to get that data collection piece. Am I kind of thinking about this the right way? Is this kind of like the new wave of farm management software, a new way to think about it?
Yeah, absolutely. In the past, clean data was necessary for value to be extracted because the dashboards, the analytics, the formulas required data to be sterilized and input into these pretty boxes. And that, as you said, puts the burden, the onus onto the growers to essentially become data clerks that collect, process data for the tech to actually work. And all those hours are essentially taxes on the system that which we believe that the growers shouldn't take on. And LLMs are kind of a fantastic way for dirty data to actually emerge as valuable because it can extract data in that manner from a less refined corpus. And so far, so kind of the tagline is that so far, solutions have asked farmers so much of them, and finally we're able to ask nothing of them and still be valuable. And that's kind of how we're thinking about this. And I think Dan would also have some thoughts about this as well.
I know y'all deal with infrastructure, so that was like one of my focal areas before this. The way that I envision our outlook on AI largely aligns with how you would plan for infrastructure development. So thinking of AI as a medium in the same way that you would consider water or electricity something that must be utilized in developing infrastructure. AI is an infrastructure tool. But what it is effectively acting as is a communication layer that prevents a oversimplification of very messy situations. And what we're really trying to kind of extract as far as the capabilities of AI are concerned is this idea that data so far has been structured cleanly to predict known knowns. AI opens the door for starting to collect the context that could let us see the unknown unknowns, to use the Rumsfeld reference. And so we are in the process of developing the infrastructure to enable that discovery. If you are applying AI to a known situation, you may improve the efficiency with which it's operating, but you are leaving unmitigated risk in the field because you are ultimately not adding to your capacity to identify risks earlier and initiate mitigation measures earlier as well.
Let's get into like how this works. So, we explored on our farm different farm management systems over the years, and like kind of like the FMS 1.0 or whatever. We would always get to the point where it's like, hey, this is interesting. This is cool. Like, it would be great to digitize our operation, how we're thinking about, crop planning and scheduling and labor and all and costs, right? Whenever we kind of like went down the road, we get to the point of like, yeah, someone has to do that data entry, that work, and it's the guys that we have in the field are not. They've got bigger fish to fry. they've got to go grow those crops. So like, walk us through, what is the process? I understand AI has unlocked a lot of this. Like, walk us through the process. You're a grower, you have a big diversified operation. Like, how do you get onboarded? Like, what does the onboarding process look like?
The platform was designed kind of precisely to respond against the difficulty of deploying this, especially because there's really no break to agriculture, right? You're in season, you're post season, you're planning, and then you're in season. So the workflow is such that a farmer logs in, draws their boundary, presses a mic, speaks, and all of a sudden those logs are tagged with weather data, time-stamped, geolocated, accompanied by any images or files you attached, and start to build up a context space on which chatbot lives. So it's as simple as that. It could also be as complex as onboarding 10 different scouts and managers on different tiers on the platform with access permission, so that field 1 can be accessed by scout 1, field 2 can only be accessed by scout 2, etc. And for them to just go out onto the field, press the mic, speak, and get the same logging process. So the kind of 2-3 tap maximum is kind of our kind of inner principle when it comes to design. If a grower user has to press more than 3 buttons to get context on the platform, then we have essentially failed. And that's really, of course, if they want to add more context and use it with complexity, they should have the option to do that. And so there's no kind of upper limit per se. But when it comes to the kind of minimum number of interactions that we want to enforce, it is kind of the 2 to 3.
Yeah, and if I were to expand on like how that really meets the field work where it's at, is a lot of this came from, oddly enough, the idea of running an objective area. Everything in a really complex objective area is run by a radio. All you do is press the button and you talk, and everyone understands what needs to happen. And there are responsible roles for collecting everything that is said and turning it into actionable intelligence. What AI is effectively doing is, rather than having to push the button, talk, and then go back, write down what was said, transpose that into an Excel sheet, transpose that into 5 different PDFs. If AI is part of the process whereby you are speaking these directions and you're recording progress, so you're saying what needs to happen and how things are going, that one interaction is sufficient now to gather context. We don't have to clean it. It is already contextually relevant to the operation. So once it's heard, it's valuable. And that's the biggest difference, because otherwise right now you have to narrow it down to like, okay, what fits in this form field? What am I going to remember to put in this notebook? And what am I going to transpose later? Everything that is said contextually on your operation now can be of value and should be of value. AI is supposed to unlock that value. And that's what we're really trying to do.
Can you connect to other data sources here? Like if we have, a Google Suite that has a lot of files about here's our different fields with the crop types and other sources of information beyond just the audio input, can you layer that together and like thinking things like Xero accounting software where we're like coding bills where like this input was purchased for this field? Is there a way to tie that all together?
So this kind of takes us directly to the roadmap, and so file uploads are possible. Alma can interact with your files. If you attach files as part of your logging, it will be able to interact with it as well. So in that way, in that manual process, yes. What we're most excited about and which is kind of being communicated by our users every other day, is integrations, building out those integrations, whether it be John Deere Op Center, which we're directly in the process of right now, whether it be Field View, whether it be the ERP systems, CRMs, on and on and on. And those integrations are becoming easier and easier to build out with the introduction of, or the enhancement of LLMs. And so at the end of the day, every data stream, whether it be sensor data, whether it be financial data, will be treated as logs in the platform. So insofar as data entry goes, it is a normalized system that can handle any format. The challenge or the problem that we're most excited to solve is making the retrieval and interaction itself very efficient when users are interacting with Alma. Because getting the data into one platform is becoming increasingly easier. The know-how of retrieving it effectively and synthesizing it well is kind of where I think the real race will begin. Give us a month and a half and we'll have some exciting integrations to show you.
The other end of that spectrum, so our feature roadmap is kind of the projection of capabilities to eventually encapsulate all of those variables. But in the world of AI, especially in the era of vibe coding, you have to de-risk user data beyond the fact that they own it and they control it and we don't manipulate it or sell it or anything like that. And the way that we de-risk this data collection from a user point of view is that you can export it. So even if the integration doesn't exist now, everything that is collected in the system, which should be much more contextually rich than any other option that you would see, you can ultimately export and integrate with through common AI tools if that is the direction that you choose while the features are in development. Our bet is that we'll eventually be able to do it in-house so conveniently and so powerfully that won't be a necessity. But it is in our mind, it's an excellent way to mitigate the risk for the grower that is worried, like, okay, if I collect all of this context and the capability I want isn't online yet, what am I going to do? We just let you do what you need to do with it. And that is kind of how we're trying to meet in the middle and push forward.
How do you guys think about areas of focus? Like, I think there's always this challenge of, boiling the ocean. You do everything. It's like the all-in-one platform. It's finance, it's agronomy, it's labor, it's water. I guess what I'm getting at is, first, how do you think about that? And like, when you're a grower, you use the product for a month. Like, where do you think you're providing the most value? Is it on like the operation side? Is it on financial? Like, talk to us about the actual value you're ultimately bringing back to the grower.
Scouting has been the primary value that we've seen gain the most traction. As you said, it's so tempting to try and boil the ocean with all these tools available to us within this kind of era of AI hype and excitement. And so I must admit that I am kind of susceptible to wanting to boil the ocean. But scouting, helping growers walk the fields much more efficiently, coordinate scouting through workers, multilingual operations, etc. That time savings piece has been so critical to getting onto operations. And so really understanding how to best facilitate that. And we're also seeing kind of usage patterns where the number of logs, scouting logs conducted when they're first on the platform is kind of a good indicator of retention and how frequently they'll utilize the platform. So ironically, if we onboard a user too early before they start to scout and they don't have logs on the platform, there's little reason for them to come back to the platform. And then we've effectively potentially burned a very promising lead. So almost being kind of selective about when we onboard users as well as who we onboard has been kind of an insight that has been very important to us.
Daniel, is there like a B2B play with this as well? You mentioned like scouting being a key focus. Like, could you theoretically go to a big ag retailer that has retail salespeople that are out in field scouting their customers' fields? Is there an angle there as well?
Yes. I don't think we can quite reveal the folks we're talking to yet, but that has been a very significant part of our B2B conversations. One detail that I could share is that scouting is almost kind of a fact of life for these retailers. They're not necessarily looking to cut costs on scouting because it is something that they do. It is part of the job. And most of the time, a significant amount of time, resources that is expended is to get to the fields in the first place, the gas prices, the trucks, et cetera, et cetera. What they're really interested in is understanding the kind of causality between a scout observation, a recommendation, and then the gradual sale of their product. Right now, because a lot of systems are disconnected, they don't quite know which observation made the most impactful recommendation that then drove the product sales. So it's kind of a black box that makes causal analysis quite difficult. With Numanac, you can start to accumulate grower level decision making to hopefully in the future recommendations, as well as weather conditions, NDVI, ET, whatever else that may be operationally significant. And when all of those kind of context collection to decision making happens in one platform, all of a sudden the causal analysis becomes something that is very much feasible. And so in that way, we are very much exploring and working with folks to get to that B2B angle. Obviously, it is a massive task. So both exciting and terrifying.
On the scouting front, so help me understand, there's been plays at like every inch of the field scouting, right? I'm thinking of, what was the Alphabet one, Tim? Mineral, right? Like where it's like a rover that's scouting every row of the field versus scouting. I'm going and looking at the field, looking at what the crop is doing, but you're not necessarily capturing every inch. Like, do you guys have a perception of that? Like the difference between those, and then like what are the ultimate insights you're trying to drive by aggregating this data? You can potentially, the AI, Dan, you mentioned this at the beginning, kind of surface issues that you didn't realize were happening.
Most of our decisions kind of revolve around deployability. So seeing as farm context is so scarce, where let's say you're an autonomous tractor startup trying to understand your ICP and field conditions, how to deploy, what their workflow is, to get that data at scale is extremely difficult, and which ultimately becomes a bottleneck to tech deployment. So if there is a piece of technology, we want it to be as easily deployable as possible, such as AR glasses, for example. User puts the glasses on, walks the field, is able to log images and voice. That's a very easy kind of deployment concept, as opposed to, let's say, a drone that requires clearance, that requires a kind of a deployment setup, operator, which Dan obviously knows much more about. But so that's kind of why we're more so focusing on the human element, because the growers themselves are essentially functioning as probably the most versatile sensors in the world. And I think all of the wisdom that is lost, all the kind of knowledge, the observations that's lost is much more valuable than another hyper granular resolution solution, making it into maybe 5 fields as opposed to the 10,000 that we want to get on by being so easily deployable. And so we don't quite know pointedly what the most valuable insight or kind of advice that we could provide with this context is going to be. All we know is that there's no scalable way to get to this context, which then bottlenecks tech deployment, AI deployment, hardware deployment, on and on and on. And so that demand is kind of our North Star.
One of the ways that I kind of frame like where we fit into this spectrum of intelligence gathering that occurs on farms is, you have satellite assets, which have a certain level of granularity and capability, drones, vehicle-based systems, human-based systems, and then kind of like static sensors and some other possible vehicles for intelligence gathering. And basically what each one of those assets is supposed to do is triage a situation to the point where it can hand off that intelligence to the next appropriate layer until a decision can be made. Our way of approaching decision-making and like injection in this is, as Daniel just said, to focus on the human side of it first, the communicative aspect of it, ensuring that that is fully captured in complete context, which it is currently in outside of, in our system, it currently is not, but capturing that with full value, and then expanding how do you get to decision-making without getting to a point of paralysis by analysis, or tacking on decision fatigue, what other assets then do you need to expand to facilitate the decision making of that person in that moment? And that's kind of how we think through what is the next connection that needs to be made in the field.
That makes sense. Guys, can you talk to us a little bit about the tech stack on kind of how you're building the tools internally? Like Ty and I have been playing a lot with Claude Code and kind of building tools internally for different projects that we're working on. Like what kind of underpins the Alma technology? Is it an LLM with a specific provider, or is it like Perplexity where it's tapping into the best available model based on the query? Like talk to us a little bit about the tech stack internally.
Yeah, so we built the system up such that it could function much like Perplexity, where we can kind of swap in and out the models in and out. Much more so on the chatbot, the Copilot end, less so on the log ingestion end. Currently, we're utilizing GPT. When it comes to internal kind of tools and tooling, much more so Claude. But with the 4.7 release and kind of the observations around it, I think we're probably going to experiment around and see what works best.
In like deployment terms, it's basically how can we guardrail this system to work? You know, you've probably heard the term constitutional AI. That's basically the approach that we take to how Alma functions. There's very specific guardrails. It has like a constitutional framework that ensures no matter what model it goes into, it is guardrailed from deviating away from expectations or intent. That's largely how we hedge against like one model supplanting or becoming a priority unnecessarily.
As we kind of wrap up this section, tell us a little bit more about where you guys are at in terms of the business, in terms of fundraising and go to market. Like, tell us about the markets you're in and kind of where you're going from here.
Absolutely. So we were bootstrapped until the end of last year. So the company is about almost 2 years old now. And we raised a very small kind of pre-launch round from Ponderosa Ventures. Evie, Anthony, and Chloe have been amazing partners, kind of always willing to get on call 1 a.m., 2 a.m., messaging back and forth, helping us out with their business models and such. So that was a $600,000 round that got us to where we are. And we just now opened up the rest of the pre-seed. So currently conducting a $1.8 million raise. To close that out and get us to 2028, which is kind of the roadmap that we have in mind to get us the full service feature set. We launched the mobile app just last week, and the traction thereafter has been great. I think the most exciting metric, kind of regardless of the user count, is probably the number of crops represented in the logs that are being made, which kind of tells us that we very much are crop agnostic, which was what we were intending to build out. So we're in and out of Reservoir, Salinas, intending to have much more of a presence in Sonoma. Danny has been a great partner and trying to get in front of as many growers as possible within the season.
Awesome. Well, this has been a ton of fun, guys. As we wrap up, how can listeners get in touch and connect with you and Numanac?
Yep. So www.numanac.ai. We'll be there to kind of get you onboarded, troubleshoot, take recommendations whenever. The mobile app is available on the App Store. Android coming soon.
No, I mean, we are also very open to just direct feedback. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can message us directly. You can find our emails and message us directly. We're always open to conversations. And I think that this is probably a general theme in this era, but if you're not open to constructive criticism, including like severe limitations or preferences, then, you probably should be building faster and funnier. So we are very much open to constructive criticism and feedback, and like, let's have a talk.
So Tim, what do you think?
Super fun conversation with Dan and Daniel. It's still early days for this company, but I think it's a really interesting approach that they're taking. Sounds like they're on a lot of acres currently, kind of getting the platform out there. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities and ways they can go with this once they get more and more grower users on the platform. It's like something that we talk about a lot of, like, there's so much stuff in like Dad and Derek's head about what they're doing on the farm is their way to kind of like synthesize this, make it easier. So I know they're rapidly working on building out new features, but it's going to be cool to watch them as they continue to grow.
Well, appreciate you guys listening, following Tim's skincare routine, Be sure to check out Numanac as well. Appreciate Daniel and Dan joining us on the podcast. We will be back next week. Thanks, guys.